Okay, we are back again looking at more sines and cosine curves. I know we're progressing slowly through this concept here, but once you understand how the sine and the cosine curves work, then looking at your other graphs for trig functions is a lot easier. Okay, so a couple of things. Let's talk about amplitude and period. Okay, amplitude is kind of like the height of your curve. So if you notice, sine curve oscillated between +1 and -1. Okay, so a couple of different ways you can do that. So here, if we go from +1 to -1, that's 2 units. Okay, if you divide it in half, you get 1. Okay, so our amplitude is 1. Another way you can think about it is something called a midline, which basically just goes down the middle. So if you cut that in half, then from the midline up is 1 unit. Midline down to the minimum is also 1 unit. Therefore, amplitude is 1. Okay. Okay, let's get rid of that. Let's talk about period. Period is how much of the graph do you need to see before it starts to repeat itself. Generally, I start at 0 just because it's an easy place to start. So your graph goes up, down, comes back up. You are back to 0 right there. Now, after that, this section just gets repeated. So you would need to be able to see this much of your graph before it just copies itself. Okay, so this distance, 0 to 2 pi, distance of 2 pi. So the period for the sine function is 2 pi. Now, you don't have to start at 0. Okay, you can start anywhere. I could start, let's say here, this is actually at -pi. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to start here with my curve. So I'm going to follow my curve until I get back to 0, and now it starts to repeat again. So same kind of thing. So if I'm starting at -pi, go to +pi, I need to see that much. I need that big of a chunk. Again, that's a distance of 2 pi. Your period is 2 pi. Okay. All right, cosine, same thing. Again, maximum is +1, minimum is -1. That's a distance of 2 units. Cut it in half, 1 unit, or think midline. Here's my middle. Okay, up 1 unit to the maximum value. Here, down 1 unit to the minimum value. My amplitude is 1. Okay, same thing with period. Again, if I tend to start at 0. Okay, it's up at 1. If I follow my curve, I go back up to 1 right here at 2 pi again. So this distance, 0 to 2 pi, 2 pi. So you need to see a distance of 2 pi. Once you see that section, then your graph starts to repeat again. Okay. All right. Now, looking at the equations, here I made a mistake. I forgot to put in the b. So if you want to just rewrite those, y equals a times sine of bx and cosine a times the cosine of bx. Okay, the a is the amplitude. The absolute value of a is the amplitude. Okay, that amplitude was kind of like how tall is it? Okay, goes up to +1, down to -1, amplitude of 1. So the value of your a can change how tall your graph is. So vertical stretch is when a is greater than 1. So 2, 3, 4. Now we saw that if you go back to this one, okay, the a in this one is 2. Okay, my amplitude is 2. Okay, maximum was at +2, minimum's at -2. Okay, so if A is between 0 and 1, so if A is 1/2, that's going to shrink it. It's going to shorten that height. Okay, when A is less than 1 or when A is negative. Okay, so even go back to parabolas. What happens when you put a negative in front of a quadratic? Well, that makes your parabola open down instead of open up. Okay, so it reflects it over the x-axis. Same thing here. If you multiply the sine wave by a negative, it's going to flip that wave. We'll do one of those here in a few minutes. Okay, then B, this value of B affects the period. Okay, the period is how big of a piece of the graph do you need to see before it starts to repeat. Okay, well, for sine and cosine, their periods are 2 pi. So that taking that value divided by the B will determine what that period is. Okay, and we saw that happen with this one right here, number 4. So in this example, B is 2. Okay, my regular period for a sine graph, period is 2 pi. But when you divide it by B, divide that by 2, that's going to change the period to pi. And, oops. Okay, and you can see if I'm here at 0, we go to pi. There you go. There's 1 period. Okay, you have 1 complete curve of that graph. Okay, so let's go back to here. Let's do a couple more examples. Again, you can use your calculator, but I'm trying to show you where the graphs are coming from. But let me get my calculator here again. All right, so y equals 5 sine 1/2 x. All right, we got all kinds of stuff going on. So first thing is let's identify the a and the b. Okay, so your equation is y equals a times the sine of bx. Okay, so the a, identify the a. My a is the 5. My b is the 1/2. Okay, well, 5, that a, that's my amplitude. Amplitude's 5. So what does that tell me? That tells me how tall my graph is going to be. Instead of, because remember sine, high point is 1, low point's -1. If my amplitude is 5, then my height is going to be 5. And my minimum is going to go clear down to -5. Okay, so that's really going to stretch that graph. Okay, now let's look at the period. Okay, your regular sine function, parent function, period is 2 pi. But I have 1/2. So 2 pi divided by b. So 2 pi divided by a half. Well, you divide by a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal, is 4 pi. So this period is 4 pi. Okay, again, period. How much do you need to see of the graph before it starts to repeat yourself? So it's going to take 4 pi to get one section complete of this sine function. Okay, so you kind of have a visual here. Your sine function starts at 0. I'm just going to kind of dot in something. Okay, it's going to end at 4 pi, or that first period is going to end at 4 pi. So that means it's going to go up to 5. It's going to come back down. It's going to go down to -5. And it's going to come back to 4. 4 pi is going to end. Okay, now I could do the same thing going the other way. So that means at -4 pi, it's going to end. So it's going to go down, come back up, and go there. Okay, so amplitude of 5, +5, -5, period 4 pi. It's going to take 4 pi to get one section of this graph in. Okay, let's go ahead and turn that off. Uh-oh. Hit something wrong. There we go. Enter. And here it is. So 5 sine of 1/2 x. If I graph that, oh, okay, I can't see it. All right, I forgot to do something. Remember, we still have our window set from those previous graphs, and I only went to +2 and -2. So I'm going to want to adjust my window. So I definitely want to be able to go -5 to +5 because I know it's that tall. The other thing is if you go here, remember we did a -2 pi and a +2 pi? And my graph I have is -4 pi and +4 pi. Oops. Okay. The other thing, my scale. If you look at this graph, it's a little hard to read, but you can see the pi there, and then it's in kind of 3 sections. It's in thirds. So this first tick mark is at pi over 3. Okay, if you remember previously, our first tick mark was at pi over 4. Okay, so I'm going to want to change that, and I just wanted it to match. Okay, I wouldn't have to change it, but if I want to kind of gauge where each tick mark is and make it compatible with what I have in front of me here, I want to do pi over 3. Okay, and then I'm going to graph. Okay, so there is the sketch. Okay, so looking at this graph, you can see on my calculator, if I do trace, I'm at 0, 0. Again, I can maybe just going to pi, so you can kind of check that as an easy point. So go to pi, and I am up at 5. Okay, and that's when I just kind of did a quick sketch in. I did a pretty good job with that. So up there at pi, I can scroll down here. And if you're thinking I'm going to cross at 2 pi, you're correct. Again, I could go 2 pi. So 2 pi is at 0. 3 pi, I'm going to be down here at -5. And then 4 pi, I'm back to 0. So this is going to, not a very good curve. Okay. All right, so there is my curve. Okay, I can go the other direction also. So I can go to the left again if you want to scroll, or you can find some of those points. High is +5, low is -5. So, and there's my curve. Okay, again, period is 4 pi, so it takes a distance of 4 pi to be able to see that whole curve. Okay, let's move on to this one. 2 cosine of 3x. So same kind of thing. We can talk, the amplitude is 2. Okay, my A is 2. And my B is 3. So to find my period, I'm going to go 2 pi divided by 3. So my period is 2/3 of a pi. Okay, so what that means is this cosine graph is in just 2/3 of a pi, I'm going to get the whole curve. All right, so let's go back over to my calculator here. Let's do this one, 2 cosine 3x. That's the one I want. Okay, so very squished up. Okay, so if your cosine starts at 1, so at 0, you're at 1. Well, actually, it's at 2 because my amplitude on this one is at 2. So at 0, I'm going to be at 2. And at 2/3, so I start up at 2, you're going to come down, you're going to go back up, and you're going to end up back at 2. So you have to get all of that accomplished in just a little